In this video, I'm going to talk about why people buy solar panels, and I'm going to draw on academic and industry in the trenches research so we don't get overly academic. Then in the second part of this video, which is a separate video, I don't know why I said second part, but it's in the link in the description, so go check that out. That's going to be more specifically if you're in the solar industry yourself, whether you're a salesperson, a company owner, or you're doing marketing, then that's going to be really helpful for understanding more specifically within your business the different drivers of potential customers and points of difference that you can create and feedback loops that you can create in your business to really improve your marketing and get better results than your competitors. So in this video, like I said, we're going to focus on more generally the different groups of people that buy solar panels, why they buy them, and more on their values and beliefs and everything. So let's jump into that. So there's unfortunately not one single group of reasons that everyone is going to be buying solar panels. There's different groups of people with different sets of values, beliefs, and lifestyles, and these different people can be roughly divided up into different subsets of different reasons why they're going to buy solar panels. So let's look at a few of the most common ones. So the first and perhaps the most obvious group of people is those who have green values, so people who care about the environment particularly. These are more likely to be people who would have been early adapters of solar panels, and even back in the 70s you had people who were living in alternative communities, building earthships, building different types of ways of living that incorporated alternative energies, even though they made absolutely no financial sense at the time, but they would nevertheless be early adopters. And so these people are going to sometimes be even put off by appeals to financial return on investment, because for them it's about higher ideals and it's about living in harmony with nature. Then, kind of at the other end of this spectrum, if we're going to look at it in this dimension, are people who have typically more politically conservative views and different values. You could say more material values. No judgment there, but that's simply the types of values that they have. And these people, conversely, could actually be put off by talking about green and green values. Particularly in certain countries and certain areas around the world, people have come to believe that green equals liberal, perhaps, and then they're going to be put off by things which are associated with that. So talking about solar panels from a financial planning, financial return on investment, reducing variability of expenses, all those kind of arguments are going to work better with those people, but bringing up the environment could then actually put them off. Then there's people who have religious beliefs which say that they should be being a good steward of the planet, which they believe they have been given by some higher being or higher form of consciousness. And so those people, in some ways, take a bit from both camps because, and of course, there's religious beliefs across all the spectrum, but they can then fall into the more politically conservative camp and respond well to arguments about the financial prudence, but then also respond well to arguments about taking care of the planet. So it can get a little mixed in there. And again, this varies by country, it varies by state. And of course, when we're getting into financial arguments, then that is a lot of it is down to the tax and local government incentives to do with solar, because in some places, you know, in the UK, there isn't really much at the moment in terms of financial incentives, but it does still typically work out from a return on investment point of view. So all those things kind of vary, but ultimately here we're talking about people's beliefs and values, and those things in terms of groups don't really change a lot over time. So that's what is, I find, most useful to understand why people are buying solar panels and answer that question really well. So then we have, alongside that, there's people who their main motivation, and they may not explicitly say it, but nonetheless, their main motivation is more about the social dynamics and being perceived as a good person, being perceived as a person of value within their community. And so in some of these studies, we have statements where people have strongly agreed to things like using green energy would help me feel accepted by others. Using green energy would improve the way I'm being perceived by others. So you kind of get the idea here. And this could be combined with any of the other types of values and beliefs, but typically it's going to go more alongside places where there's a higher concentration of people who have more green values, and so therefore they're wanting to signal that to other people in their community. And then going more back towards the material values end of the spectrum, we have people who perceive themselves as technology early adopters and advocates for new technology. They want to feel like they're essentially living in the future. And so the types of people who are in this area, they would be more likely to be buying something like a Tesla, not necessarily for the perceived environmental benefits, but they would be buying it more for things like self-driving technology, and they would be wanting to feel like I said, like they're living in the future. And so if you're running a solar business, then the way that you appeal to these different groups of people and the places and the targeting online that you use to reach these people need to take into account the other things that they're doing and talk to them in their language. And likewise, if you're buying or thinking about buying solar panels yourself, then it's really helpful to understand where you sit in the spectrum so you can help understand how people are going to be communicating with you, how you can find a solar company that resonates with your way of thinking, but also just to double check that you're making the right choices for you and whether this makes sense for you. Another piece which comes into this, which has been highlighted in some of the different research that I've read, is life events. So one of the big ones is retirement, and that goes along with the financial prudence side of things, where people who are retiring are not necessarily thinking about, am I going to get like a 10%, 30%, whatever return on investment, but they're thinking about how do I reduce the unpredictability and the instability in my life now that I'm going to be retired and going to be on a fixed income. And solar can be a really good way to do that, especially if they're going to be staying in the same house for a reasonable amount of time. So one other group which does come out as a distinct piece of the puzzle, even though it is tightly connected to some of the other sets of values and beliefs and groups of people, is self-reliance. And that can be self-reliance in terms of not relying on a local utility company that people love to hate. It could be self-reliance in terms of being fully off the grid, or it could be on a national level, almost in terms of national security and not wanting to be living in a country which is overly reliant and overly at the whim of other nations where they're importing electricity from. So that obviously connects to the politically conservative views, but it also can connect to resilience and self-reliance in terms of ecological sustainability. So you also have the green values coming in there as well. So to summarize, why do people buy solar panels? Well, it's different sets of values. There's different people who buy them for different reasons. Some of the main reasons are conserving energy, being more ecologically sustainable, being more financially prudent and getting a good return on investment, or simply stabilizing their living costs, being more resilient and more independent and more self-reliant, and that can be for different underlying reasons, being at the forefront of technological innovation. So when you're appealing to these types of people, if you're trying to sell solar to them, then promoting things like apps that let them track their usage and optimizing their battery levels and their battery system throughout the day could really be a good hook for them. And amongst all these different groups of people, there are people who would be really happy to buy solar even if it doesn't necessarily pay off financially. So that's important to remember. It's also important to take into account if you're actually thinking about buying solar panels yourself, because depending on your values and your reasons for being interested, then it's going to affect how happy you are with the result. So for example, if you're thinking about it more from a return on investment point of view, then it's important to find a solar installer and solar consultant that is going to be honest and give you an accurate picture of that. Because if you don't end up getting that return on investment, ultimately, you're not going to be happy. You're going to have buyer's remorse. Equally, if on the flip side, you're more interested in it for the green side of things, then you might want to consider things like how sustainable the whole chain of production of the whole system is, and taking that into account as much as possible. So I hope you found this video useful. In the next video, which will be linked in the description down below as soon as it's ready, will be more focused on if you're in the solar industry yourself and you're looking to get better results, get more customers for your business. And that's going to be focused on using some of these principles, but honing in with a laser focus on your specific market, using some of these feedback loops to improve your marketing, get better results, get lower cost leads, get more sales for less money than your competitors are able to. So keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or leave a comment below and let me know what kind of videos you'd like to see more of in the future. And thanks again for watching.